Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt Brown. This is Dental Unfiltered, and I have a super special guest today. A guest I've been looking forward to for weeks now. Dr. Todd Fleischman from Philadelphia. We were at Paul Goodman's event, Dental Boost Camp together, probably about a month or two ago now. And I was speaking, and like before I even knew what his name was, he was in the front row of my talk, and we were connecting. Uh, he was not to sound any kind of way, but he was making eyes at me and smiling at me, and somehow we were connecting. I don't know how, and it was awesome. And Todd and me, I think I was trying to find him throughout the event, and Paul Goodman had told me that occasionally talked to Todd Fleischman. He liked your talk, and like he's a smaller, faster guy, and I would like wait outside the room where I thought he was, and like he wouldn't be there. And all week long, I was trying to find him, and then I finally found him. It was probably the end of the last day or the middle of the last day, and we connected. And he's just really awesome dentist from Philadelphia. Really exciting speaker. We actually said to each other, we should lecture together, and kind of like the odd couple would be the giant, bald, fat military guy and the tiny Jewish dentist, and it would be the most odd couple lecturing together, but I think it'd be the most entertaining duo in dental. All the stereotypes, crazy big veteran with a tiny little Jewish guy, would be great. So today's episode's about being a city dentist, but first, Todd, just tell us about yourself, your love of dentistry, and that kind of stuff.
First of all, Matt, super excited to be on the cast with you. Really appreciate the opportunity. Glad we connected thanks to Paulie. He's such a conduit for me in the Dental Nachos universe, so I really appreciate it. I'll give you the spiel that I give to patients, right? I mean, I was born and raised Northeast Pennsylvania, actually from Wilkes-Barre. Went to NYU undergrad. From NYU, came to Philadelphia, go to dental school at Temple. That kept me here. I love Philadelphia. And 21 years ago, when I got out of school, there wasn't a lot of technology being utilized to find jobs, so you would have to get out and hustle. And my dad gave me good advice. He was like, pick where you want to live. And I wanted to live in Center City, Philly. I really fell in love with it. I was a city boy at that point, even though I was from small town. And so I started putting roots down in Center City, Philadelphia. And long story short, you get out of school and you hustle. I was a hustler. I worked like 5 different jobs over 5 different days to fill my week, all different types of practice styles. And after about 3.5, 4 years, I had an opportunity to purchase, and I'm very candid about it with people who ask me my journey, because this was very typical back then. There were still single doctor practices around that were for sale. And I purchased my fee-for-service practice back in 2010 from my predecessor, Dr. Robert Kravitz. And my practice had been around for now, it's like 117 years, which is wild, right? So we think we don't know, we don't have any proof, but we can't imagine there's a more continuous dental practice in Center City, Philadelphia than ours. I'm the 5th generation in the practice. And so, I was driven by where I wanted to live. I was driven by a practice style. I knew from fee-for-service dentistry because of my father, who was a fee-for-service periodontist in Wilkes-Barre. And I had a feeling that I was going to end up in the city and stay here. And so I guided all my choices around that. And I think that is important to focus on for young dentists is not that you can't be flexible, but unfortunately with dentistry, there's licensure issues and there's things that you have to think about. And candidly, to really, build a business and have your full earning potential, it pays to have roots somewhere typically. And so I chose to practice in the city because that was where I wanted to live, and I didn't want to commute, and I didn't want to have to schlep, and I didn't want to have to get in a car so much. So that was really the story that brought me to Philadelphia and ended up with my practice. But it was a bit serendipitous in the sense that, I was sort of in the right place at the right time. I had made the right connections. I had worked the rooms. I had gone to the study clubs. I looked in the back of journals. You weren't going online 20 years ago, interestingly enough, right? You just weren't. And so I did it through word of mouth and through hustle. But I wanted to be in the city, and that really guided my decision-making process. And then it was just about how to maximize the potential as much as possible.
So is it 5 generations of dental in the same exact space?
So not the same exact space, but of those generations, the first one might have been outside the building that I'm in, which is in Center City, downtown Philadelphia, right near Rittenhouse Square. To put it in perspective, like my building's right across the street from the Apple Store. The Apple Store in every city is usually in like the the center of stuff, right? Like they pick the best locations, let's be honest. And so that gives you an idea of sort of where my practice is. And so it has been here in this iteration where I am right now since 95. So what's that, 30 years? And then prior, they were a couple floors down in a bigger space when they were more insurance driven. They had to have a little bit more space at the time. And then as they changed practice styles, they took a little less space and moved up a bunch of floors. But we've been in this building and in this location 60, 70 years. Yeah, wild stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, wild stuff. Stuff that you don't hear about, quite
Yeah,
candidly. Yeah.
that's crazy. So,
Yeah, it's neat.
you grew up in Wilkes-Barre, decided to move
Yeah.
to to the city. I feel like
Yeah.
we're in these Facebook groups, me and you and everybody, and I feel like there's a lot of people asking about like dentists in certain areas, but I feel like dentists in cities don't really get a lot of love. There's not a lot of information out there. I think you have to be a really brave dentist today to open up in a city. Cost of real estate is high. Cost of patient acquisition is high. It gets kind of tight, right? So I feel like today might be a little bit different moving into a city than maybe. I'm assuming you moved into a city for your practice in the 80s or 90s.
2047, so 2000s. I finished school in '04, and so you definitely deal with different challenges, right? I mean, the one that we could talk about for the longest amount of time, besides the rent and the cost of doing business in a city, which is always going to raise things from your fees to all the stuff when it comes to managing your facility and having work done in it and doing construction on the 11th floor and small spaces and all those things that hinder growth and scalability, which is what you and I were talking about, is you run out of space, right? I've now been in my practice 15 years. We've had incredible organic growth, slow and steady, over those past 15 years that I've owned the practice. And we're running out of space. And that is a real conversation, because when you start to add more space, you need to have more business. You need to be able to pay the rent. You don't want to become cash poor. You want to have good flow, like all those things that you think about. And so there are challenges, no question, but we're candid with patients about it. Like, there's a convenience of everything in the city, right? You don't have to park. You walk to the office. Plenty of people do come and they park in the lot behind us. But, for those who live in town, there's a huge convenience factor that typically people will pay a small premium for. It's not some exorbitant thing. And our margins probably are not as great as some of the suburbanite practices, especially when you can typically own your own space at a lot of these places. And unfortunately, in my high-rise building, I can't own my own space, so I can't pay myself rent. All those little like nuancy, tax-driven things, right, that help with your business and running it in the most profitable way. And so you give up certain things to have pros for others, right? And it's a decision that you have to come to grips with, and then you sort of just work with it and roll, and you don't try and satisfy every need because it's never going to happen, and you come to terms with the fact that there's just a pro con scenario, and if you, when it comes to growth, then you have other decisions. Do I move? Do I open up a new practice? Do I have a secondary practice? It just depends on how you want to practice. And I always tell young dentists, like, those are things that you really sort of have to think about, because it's a long game, man. It's a marathon. And if you set yourself up for success and you're able to think things through about where you want to live and how you want to practice and the space you need, it can be easier. It can.
I had a doc, really good guy, Jose Ladino. He opened up in Brooklyn, I think the Bronx, outside of New York. And there's so many challenges to dentistry in a city. But one thing you did point out, which I remember, I worked in New York City and lived in that region in my 20s. And it's kind of like a beehive. And it's like I didn't have to walk from my office really any distance for like a haircut, dental practice, any kind of food I wanted. Like I had Ethiopian food, Indian food, Italian food, regular fat American bar food. Like I had everything like within 3 blocks. The soup Nazi soup place was near my old office from Seinfeld. Yeah, it was right around the corner. And there is a thing of like, you know, I think you're right. I think it's like there's one trade off is there's a parking problem. The other trade off is a lot of your clients might not park at all.
I mean, I've seen the practice over the years since I bought it, back in 2010. I've seen the practice really become city centric, because of our lifestyle, right? And that's what happens. Like, it sort of becomes all encompassing in your universe, right? I walk to work 10 minutes. My wife walks to work 5 minutes. My kids walk to school 15 minutes, right? And so what happens is that you end up forming, like you said, this beehive, this universe, right, around you of people that allow you to help grow your business because of the relationships you build, right? And then you have to execute. It always comes back to execution, right? It always comes back to providing a service that people value and want to be a part of. But at the end of the day, if you start with convenience, if you start with less barriers, which for people in the city is finding a convenient place to go, then oftentimes it'll sort of be self-perpetuating, and that's what we found. But you just have to give it time. And I find that the biggest hindrance for people who want to be in the city is they want to grow fast and they want to do everything quickly, and that is a harder challenge. I have lots of friends who are in like Manhattan, and I mean, listen, in Philadelphia, we're lucky. I can have a decent sized space actually, and have like moderate size operatories, all things considered. You go to Manhattan, and it becomes postage size stamp stuff, right? Like these are really small operatories, really small spaces, exorbitant numbers. Their dentistry is the same. It's fabulous, right? But their fees are higher because at the end of the day, you have to pay your rent. Like it's just the way the numbers work out. And people who live in the big cities understand that they're going to pay premium fees typically, and everyone just comes to grips with it. You build a practice of like-minded individuals over time, and then that city handcuff that people sometimes feel doesn't feel that way anymore. It really doesn't.
It's interesting. I have a practice. You say postage stamp. I have a practice in New York, in the city, and their like waiting room and three ops and CBCT is on one floor, and then two more ops and like a hygiene room is on another floor in a different space. And they tell their staff like today you're working on in the second space, and then they kind of send people back and forth, and the doc runs back and forth between the spaces.
Yeah, that's a real thing. I mean, I know practice in Philly that does that. They're on different floors. They go through the emergency stairwell to go up and down. And sometimes you have no choice because people sign leases 15 years plus riders on top of them, right? So if spaces don't open up next to you, you don't have any opportunity unless you move somewhere else. And as we all know, moving a dental practice is exorbitantly expensive, right? It
Oh,
just
it's crazy
becomes
expensive.
it becomes crazy.
Those
And
chairs are heavy. They're awkward. You need people
forget
that know how
about
to move
that. The
that stuff.
facility itself,
Oh,
the logistics of
yeah,
facility, plumbing a space,
plumbing,
right?
plumbing.
All the all the compression and stuff that you need and the big machinery. All my equipment is like shoehorned into a closet. And we used to have when I first bought the practice. I mean, listen, my practice runs smoothly now, knock wood, but that could change in a drop of a hat. We're all about preventative maintenance now, just like we are with patients, right? With our equipment, because you really want to avoid something shutting down. But early on, we had some old compressors. When I bought the practice, stuff had been around for a while. I'm not looking to invest at that point because I'm in incredible amounts of debt. And then all of a sudden, the compressor would blow and you lose a day or two of production and you go, this can't be, I have to figure out something out. They would have to go into the closet where my compressor and vacuum are, take one of them out to go fix the other one. It becomes a whole mess, right? And that's the problem with these city practices, is that just from a facility standpoint, it becomes challenging. Again, pros cons, right? Not everybody wants to work in the city, but there is a lot of opportunity, just like there's a ton of opportunity in the middle of nowhere where they don't have dentists and they're looking to bring people in. So, listen, in the city, there's no question we're a dime a dozen, right? That is a thing. You have to fight for patients a little bit. You have to differentiate yourself in some way or another, which we can talk about ad nauseum in future parts. But for what it is, you just got to take advantage of the space you have as much as possible.
So you go to open a practice in the city, right? So when you first decided to do this, so you were from the country, from Wilkesboro. Your dad said, "Do it where you want to live," and from a dental perspective, where you wanted to live was one of the toughest places to start yourself. I mean, city. I mean, like I've never operated in a city. I deal with hundreds of practices across the country. I see things, but my impression is, and I've never been on the ground doing what you're doing, is that breaking into a suburban area, suburbs outside of a city, not terribly hard. Breaking into the city, I feel like city people are very habit based, and they go to the same restaurant, they walk the same path back and forth to work. They have their little nucleus of the city. That's their nucleus that they are part of that organic thing, because the city's like a giant beehive, like we said. Like, how intimidating was it saying, I'm going to open up here and buy a practice in the city? Like, were you intimidated at all by the condition?
So yeah, of course. I mean, I'll never forget the conversations. I was working in my practice currently as an associate, and I was also working in South Jersey, right across the bridge from Philadelphia. South Jersey is right there. So I was working. I'm licensed in Jersey also. I was working in a practice in South Jersey, which I had been at since I had left my residency. And I remember being in the parking lot of this butcher that I would go to at lunch to get sandwiches and then also pick up like steaks and stuff to bring home into the city for dinner. This great like country butcher when I was working in a South Jersey suburb. And I remember being in the parking lot in my little Mazda at the time and talking to my accountant who was brand new to me and my lawyer who was brand new to me because I was an associate. I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about the people that needed to help me buy a real business. I mean, what did I know about buying a business, dude? Like it's at 20, no one knows anything. At 30 years old, I was a young 30. I knew nothing about it. And so I asked the guys on the phone, I asked my accountant, I asked my lawyer, I said, there seems to be a lot of risk here. I'm buying a fee for service practice. Yes, I'm an associate there, but I'm only there 2 days a week out of the 4 that it's open. I've only met, let's say, 30% of the patient base so far. What the hell am I doing? What if I buy this practice, which 2/3 of the value was just the charts, right? It was nothing. Like everything else is just the equipment and a rental property that you can't even own. I said, I'm buying 2/3 of the book of the business. 2/3 of the value is the patient base. What if they just all leave? What if they just all leave? Because they can literally, like you're saying, Matt, walk down the street. And thankfully in my building, in my high rise, there's only one other dentist and we don't have similar styles. So it's not really a competitive thing. But they can literally walk across the street to my office in a medical building and have 50, literally 50 dentists to choose from. Okay.
Really?
Across the street.
In that
Yes,
one
across the
building,
street.
there's 50.
Probably, maybe 40. Maybe I'm being hyperbolic, right? But like, it's
Yeah.
definitely a number that is extraordinary that you get when you're in a city, right? Especially in a small concentrated area like Center City, because there's a large population here. And they said to me, Todd, and these guys didn't even know me that well, but I had personality at that point. I was already sort of like a vibrant guy. And they were like, people aren't going to leave. And I really didn't believe them. But 15 years later, I do understand what they were saying in the sense that there's a lot of psychology involved with dentistry, right? And we could talk about this ad nauseum too.
There's so much psychology in
People
dentistry.
don't want to find a new clinician. They don't. They're looking for an excuse to leave, right? But if you don't give them that excuse, they're typically not going to leave you because most of the time their relationship isn't with the doctor anyway. It's with the hygienist or it's with the office manager or if it's with the front desk or it's with just the environment or the comfort of knowing where they're going and what kind of experience they're going to expect, right? Without all the questions and all the uncertainty that can come with dentistry. And so I didn't really believe it at the time. And I was certainly anxious about opening the city where I'm a dime a dozen, which is coming back to your question, right? Which is like, there's 1,000 of us. I'm the young guy in town now. Why would people choose me? Well, I bought a practice of active patients. They gave me a shot. Most of them, are well educated and understood that like if I was the guy that my predecessor chose and I was the one taking over this business, then this would probably work. And it did. And so some of it was taking a chance, some of it was believing in myself, obviously. Some of it was the right time in the right place. I mean, I was 5 years out of residency. I was ready to make the pull. I was ready to own my own business. I knew I had the most potential being my own boss. That was another piece of advice my father gave me. He was like, pick where you want to live, but then own your own business, right? Because it's all we knew. It's all we knew coming from a periodontist son. He owned his own business. It's all we knew. But he felt very strongly that you don't want to take orders from anybody else. You want to be in control of your own destiny. And dentistry, which is a big reason why I went into it in the first place, gives you that opportunity, right? And that's the part that bums me out so much these days when we're talking about city dentists, owning your own practice, being a single doctor clinician, right? It's a lot harder, it's a lot more expensive, but it still comes with an incredible dividend, right? And I would encourage dentists to continue to think about private practice, not getting involved in private equity necessarily early on, and building your own business because there are incredible advantages to it, right? And so, I had a lot of confidence in myself once I had the people who I trusted give me pats on the back. And then I was like, hell, if you're going to make this kind of investment, which by the way, now you're buying the most expensive thing you ever bought in your entire life. I'd never spent more expensive than my first house, more expensive than any education I had. It was the biggest investment I'd ever made in my entire life. It was the first investment that I had done on my own completely without my parents' help. I'm very much honest about that with people. I had came from great opportunity. I was very fortunate, right? But I worked hard to put myself in a position that I could then do it for myself, right? Once I got the opportunity, I took advantage of it. And I was like, hell, let's just do it. And I took out a giant loan and I figured this is the time. And I was engaged and just about to get married. And I had the support from Wendy, from my wife, which was really important. You need to have someone on your side, in my opinion. You can certainly do it on your own. I know plenty of guys do it, but I needed someone to look at me and go, this is our move for our family, setting us up for our future, right? Like you have to take this next step so that we can build something here together, right? And that's something that was interesting to me.
I don't think people talk about this portion enough. Like, you're in your car. What? Just actually, where was this? What town was this butcher shop in? 'Cause it sounds familiar.
This is Pittman, New Jersey. 42 to 55 from the city. It'd take me like 25 minutes to get there, reverse traffic. I loved it. It was a great job. It was a different type of practice than what I'm in now, but I spent a lot of time there, quite candidly, cutting my teeth, right? And being mentored by good doctors who ran a very good insurance driven business, but quality care, high level care, but quantity based. And they really gave me an opportunity. I helped grow that business. I mean, listen, I was there 5 years and I grew that business with them. And when I left, they were not happy, right? But it was what it was because I had to move on. And yeah, I had to grow. And I also felt like I had much more potential. I did. I mean, I felt confident in myself. It's important for us to feel confident in ourselves, to give yourself that credit. And I felt confident in myself. And while I'm a big personality, I'm a relatively diminutive guy, but I said to myself, it doesn't matter size, shape, or color. All it matters is attitude. It really does. And I'm a young looking dude. I was young looking back then. People would say, how could you own a practice? You look like you're 25 years old. I was 32 at the time. That's their problem, not mine. It wasn't a thing for me. I used to say to them, I'll prove to you what I'm worth. You just got to give me a chance, or you can leave me based on how I look, which is myopic and self-centered, and that's their problem, right? Like I don't worry about other people's shtick, as we say, right? They have their own problems. I have my own problems, but I'm interested in pushing forward, right? And I was always interested in pushing forward.
You're at this butcher shop and you're talking
Yeah.
about you're
I can
30 years
picture it.
old.
I can picture it
I, for,
16,
it,
17 years later.
yeah, I can kind of see you like I can see you
In my
sitting in the
car,
driver's seat.
I'm
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
car, right? Like
With a
waiting to go in.
with a flip cell phone.
It was a StarTAC or something. I'm sure.
StarTech. That's what I saw in my head was you in a StarTech. For some reason, I see you wearing like a leather jacket and like
I wish I was that cool back then.
yeah, and you're sitting there and you're on the phone with your StarTech phone, and you're on the phone with your lawyer, and then with your accountant, and that's a really intimidating time for a dentist.
You're about to get into incredible amount of debt.
Yeah, pre-acquisition. I think there's a couple of really tense times for a dentist. I think one tense time is coming down to the end of being a D4 is really tense. I think that's a really tense time for dentists. Um, I think when they first get their associateship and they're starting to that first week that they're being a dentist, I think is super tense. I think you guys go through this like first 4 years out of school is just a lot of tension and intimidation for you guys, and then you're like, all right, it's time. It is. It's an overwhelming time because you guys aren't really like don't get me wrong, you guys aren't really dentists.
We don't know anything, dude. What are you talking about?
You don't know zero really. Like I watch new D4s hit practices, and I'm in practices all the time, and I meet guys that have been out of school a month, and when I say they look into their eyes and I see the fear, and I'm like, listen, man, it'll all work out, bro. It's gonna work out. It's kind of like when I would jump out of an airplane with my guys, and I have a new guy. I turn around, look over my shoulder, like, you okay? Like, yeah, I'm good. It's the same. It's the same look. It's the same fear in their eyes, right? And then we go on to acquisition, and it's like, okay, so now I've established that I am a dentist, but now can I be a practice owner? So now you're moving into the city, so you take acquisitions already intimidating, you follow your heart to the city, another intimidating scenario. This practice you've seen 30% of the patients in, you're going to buy it. It's fee for service, which is the holy grail of dentistry, is to achieve fee for service. Like that's the grail, right? Like everybody and their brother is like, I wish I could be fee for service. My opinion is I don't if you were cut out for it and you want to be it, you don't have to wish to be. I think it's a very achievable thing myself. So young Todd Fleischman's spending some time in a PPO practice, some time in a fee for service practice. He chooses fee for service, which I think there is a amount of pressure put on that in the industry of that being harder. So you pick fee for service in the city.
Right.
I mean, you like double down
You're
on
painting a
hard.
tough picture. Yeah. Yeah.
But it is though, Todd. It was very that's
Well,
a that is the but a lot of listen. I talked to a lot of new docs trying to buy a practice to do a startup,
yeah.
and that is something like I would say 8 out of 10 dentists would get intimidated by that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I will give Bob Kravitz, my predecessor, a lot of credit. He gave me, gave me a lot of confidence. He set me up for success with patients. He wrote a letter to the patient base. He was vested in my success. He was a legacy practice for him that had been, yeah, tons of goodwill. It was a legacy practice that had been around forever. He wanted to succeed. He could have sold it probably for more money to someone that he didn't know, right? Like we had those conversations. And by the way, like he did his due diligence. I did my due diligence. This is a good story. Like when I was ready to buy the practice, I wanted first right of refusal. That was written into our my associate contract was first right of refusal, meaning that he could sell it to me first. Whatever he wanted to sell it to me, I got first right of refusal. Well, that's fine, but his number was not my number. So he gave me a number. I was like, that's cool, but I know enough to get my own appraisal, right? So I hired a guy. I had money in my pocket at that point. I've been working 5 years. This is when you start investing in yourself. And I hired a guy to come in and back then to do a chart pull, right? And do a full appraisal. And our numbers were off by more than six figures. Okay. So by a six-figure number, by several six-figure numbers, right? By hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I said to him, I will give you the money, no negotiation of what my guy said it was worth, because that's a third party. He was not getting paid on commission. He's not getting paid on how much he sells it for. I paid him a straight number, a couple $1,000s. He gave us a number. He's known in the business. Whatever he said it was worth, I'll just give you that number. My predecessor, to his credit, was a young man. Unfortunately, he came down with a chronic illness and he couldn't practice anymore. So he was just 60 years old. And he said, listen, I got to go out and I'm going to try and find a bigger bidder. And I said, that's your total prerogative because this is your baby. I just wanted first right of refusal. I'm not going to pay you the number you want. Now you can go and try and farm it out. Now, this is before private equity. Okay. To my luck, Matt. Okay. To my luck, big time. Not today. Today, he would have gotten an incredible time value, amazing value times, and I would have been left hung out to dry, hung out to dry, right? And that is what it is, just based on timing and luck and me being 47 and not being 27 and all those things, right? Just generational. So he went out and they tried to sell it to a bigger bidder. And at the end of the day, he probably could have. And I think a number came to him that he could have, but it wasn't so much greater than mine. And because, and this is a really important part, he and I had already had this relationship. I had already been ingratiating myself with the patients. He was a generous soul. And he decided to leave his practice with someone he felt was going to be more of a legacy than a random doctor just to give him an extra $100,000, right? Which, to his credit, was an incredibly generous and empathic approach to me that I still to this day tell him, and I'm very candid, that this decision that he allowed me to purchase his practice was the most life-changing decision I've ever made in my entire life, maybe just second to marrying Wendy, right? But other than that, I can't really tell you what else would have guided my life more than ownership of this practice, right? And I knew that going into it. And when you get an opportunity, sometimes you just got to pull the trigger, right? You just got to do it. And I was willing to take that risk. I was.
I think there's two relationships here that really mattered to him. One was the relationship with you, and one was the relationship with his patients, and he went and handed off to the right relationship, right? Like we say, like, I think a lot of times we say the word legacy in dental, and I think the real meaning behind that in dental, I think a lot of times legacy in a lot of other places is like an ego projection, like I'm gonna leave this like lasting footprint on earth. I think in dental, the word legacy is like I'm gonna hand off my patients the same level of caring and compassion I had for them that I believe in.
It makes perfect sense. And you only hope that you've built a strong enough relationship that sometimes people will choose that relationship over dollars, right? Or that legacy, whatever you want to define it as, over dollars. It's harder to find these days. I'm fortunate for Bob Kravitz. I am. And I'm fortunate for that opportunity, but I put myself there. I'm honest about that. And then I just took the bull by the horns, man. And what I recognize now 15 years later, September 1st was 15 years of me owning it. Patients loved Dr. Kravitz, right? I got to tell you, like, I'll never forget when I first bought the practice. I was like, how do you go into the room? You tell them what they need. They just say yes to it, and then you walk out. I was like, how do you do it? I don't understand. It was unbelievable. Whereas I would walk in and I would tell them the same thing, and they go, no, no thanks. I'm not interested, right? Well, here I am 15 years later, and what you recognize is that when you show people that you care about them, when you build strong relationships because of how you treat them, and how you treat your team, by the way, which then in turn is how they treat the patients, and it all becomes full circle, right? It's all becomes full circle. People will invest in you, they will, right? And they will find the dollars to stay in your practice because they do appreciate you. And unfortunately, they don't really remember 15 or 20 years from Dr. Kravitz anymore because we've done a good job transitioning them to the Taft team way of doing stuff, right? And that, while similar in nature, has been a different iteration over the past 15 years. It has. And so that's exciting now is that I will tell you, only since really COVID, right? The past couple of years since COVID, do I truly feel like the practice is mine, which is wild, right?
That's interesting. So you felt like you were an associate just substituting in for years.
I just felt like people didn't see me as the core guy until the past couple years when I continued to prove myself through my actions, through my behavior, through my dedication that I did have their best interest in mind. They had had a 30-year relationship with him. What would I expect? It's unfair for me to come in and think that it just transfers to me without proof, right? That's not fair to patients. It's not. And so I made sure that we would hold up my end of the bargain. That's all I had to do.
That gets to a lot of docs. A lot of docs buy a practice and it bothers them for the first few years that, like, I still feel like it's not my practice. But dude, you're not gonna feel like listen, if you wanted it to feel like it was your practice in the beginning, you should have gone to a startup because it's not gonna feel like it's your practice because these people, you're like stepping in. It's like being a stepdad stepping into a marriage and into the house the other guy built with the family he built, and then say that guy passed away or something. You feel like, man, I'm living with this guy's ghost. Yeah, you're going to for years.
I literally this week just changed a piece of artwork in one of the operatories to stuff that I preferred because his stuff was still sitting up. I was not of the type, I've never been of the type where I need to make huge transitions which become jarring for patients. It's, again, psychology. When I bought the practice, I did as little change as possible initially because I was enough of a change, right? Now you come in, you start changing the atmosphere, changing this, that, and the other thing, changing staff, doing this, that. You are going to, you're going to affect patients in a way that may not be a positive sign. And so that I didn't want to trigger anybody. I really didn't. I wasn't interested. It was very important that it's less about you, right? And more about your practice. That's what doctors have to understand. You could be the leader and leading is important, right? But it's not about you. And as soon as you make it not about you, both your team and your patients recognize it, and then they make it about you. Then they want to make it about you, which is so wild, right? Because then they give you credit for the empathic atmosphere, for the congenial atmosphere that you provide, and everyone picks up on it, man. It's awesome.
It's weird, like docs sometimes want to make these giant changes and I don't think they've realized, like, they go to an acquisition, like, I want to change this, I'm going to change that, I'm going to change the practice management software, I'm going to change the way we do this. And it's like, you just made the biggest change. You change the product, you change the doc, right? Like, you want to slow down this a little bit and let you can't shock the patients, you can't put them in the shock. You know what I mean? Like, and part of it too is we talked about before with the dental anxiety. I mean, everyone's got dental anxiety, whether existing patient or not, and you put them through all this shock. When you buy the acquisition, you're worried about keeping all the patients, and then you buy it and you do these things that run off a lot of the patients.
Especially fee for service, because those patients now, what you've bought, the goodwill that you've bought, are the patients who already know how to pay at time of treatment.
They've already been
That
trained.
correct. You call it whatever
Yes,
you want, right? But we've used that
they've been
word,
trained.
right? They've already been trained
They have
psychologically to
been.
put their card down because we're providing a service, just like if they were having a service anywhere else, right? So there's value in that, right? But if you start to make them think about it too hard, they do understand. They're not stupid, right? These are educated consumers. They do understand that they could probably get more benefit going somewhere else down the street. And if they don't have a relationship with me and everything's starting to change and feel like it's upsetting, then they will move because they're like, why do I have to stay here anyway? He's changing everything. There's no reason to keep going, right? Listen, there are plenty of models and approaches that work. We all know it, right? But I do think there's something to be said for taking your time and recognizing that if you plan on doing this a long time and you want to be chairside, which I do still want to be chairside, that it's a marathon and it's a slow game and you got to pace yourself through those changes so that you can really get those patients to buy into when you want to make a change. They go, it must be important. Todd finally made a change. It must be important, right? That hits different than just blank slating everything and starting over again.
Yeah, I think timing is everything. I think so. You're 6 months into owning the fee for service practice. You just bought it, and you say, "Hey, we're going to change how we do these four things to a patient." And in their head, they go, "And this guy just wants to change everything." 6 years in, instead of 6 months in, you have a relationship with patients. And they say, "Hey, Doctor Todd really cares. He's trying to improve things. And he's going to make these changes for us." The difference is time, and the real difference is relationship, right? Is is human equity built up on both sides, right? In the beginning, you have no human equity for these patients. You're just trying to establish the foundation of that chair side equity with that individual and the trust of what you're saying. When it happens, the timing of 6 years later or more, whenever it is, like you just changing that piece of artwork. You change that piece of artwork a patient loved to look at 6 months in, they go, I liked that painting. 6 years in, they go, oh, Todd got it. I like Todd. Todd's got good taste in paintings, right? It could be the same painting, just two different time periods. Why is it so different? It's the equity with the patient, right? So going back to being a city dentist. So you did it in the 2000s till now. You've been operating in a city very successfully. If a dentist came to you as I'm going to acquisition or I'm going to do a startup, something like that in a city, what would be like the top two risks you would tell him to pay really good attention to?
Expandability, right? Like once you grow out of your space, what are you going to do? Like that's the biggest challenge that I continue to have, right? And I have a space open to me next right now that opened up post COVID that isn't rented yet, and you know, deciding to pull the trigger on that kind of thing is challenging. But to have the flexibility, expecting that you will continue to grow over time, which I've proven to myself, just sort of happens organically again, I think is really important. Other than that, I really do think it's the lifestyle choice, right? I think you have to decide if you want to be in a city environment, right? Do you want to either commute into a city, which I have plenty of colleagues who live in the suburbs and commute into town, or do you want to live in the city with which you work, which I think allows you to grow your business a little bit quicker, a little bit more of your style, maybe a little bit within your community, a little bit more. I mean, I have buddies who have city practices but live in the burbs. They're not as connected to their patients, right? It hits different. And so it really just depends on how you want to practice. They also like it because they practice in the city, but they live in the burbs, so they don't have to see all their patients all day like I do. I literally, because Philadelphia is a small city and it's really in neighborhoods, I can't walk home without running into somebody, right? So you have to want to sort of have that relationship with your patients or have that affectation where when you see them out with your kids, playing sports at the grocery store, at a concert when you've had a couple beers, like at the pool, like you have to be willing to have them be part of your community. And so I think in a city, you see that more depending on what kind of city you're in. Maybe not Manhattan so much, right? Maybe not Los Angeles or Chicago, but Boston, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Baltimore, right? Like Austin.
I always said Boston is a big town, not a big city. Philadelphia is a so Philadelphia is the same way. I grew up, right near where you are, and you're right. Like really, what you're saying is, are you willing to accept 1950s small town America in a big city on 7 city blocks where you live. Because, I in my head when you say this is what I imagine. I mean, me and you both are talkers. I think we're the same that we talk to people in public randomly, that we say hi and talk to people. I think we're probably the same that way. And I could see Todd and Wendy out to dinner, sitting like on a street side, open air, and a couple sitting down next to you, and you turning and making a comment about something, and you guys becoming friends, and then being, "Oh, what do you do? I'm a dentist right here," and them going, "I need a dentist," and I have a feeling that you've grown your practice that way many times.
That's super astute. I'll tell you another very quick story. Literally yesterday. That's why this thing, it's always happening, right? Like that's why it's always happening. Whether I'm changing a picture in a room finally after 15 years, or yesterday, my hygiene coordinator, Caitlin, had a beautiful baby 11 months ago. Finally, we got to meet her yesterday. She brought her to the practice because she lives in South Jersey. She brought her to the practice yesterday. Before she came in, I never get to do this, but I had a little block in my schedule. I ran down the street to like this children's boutique store and bought a little like stuffy and a Eagles onesie and a tutu for her and put a little present together. So when she got here, I could give her daughter a little gift, right? So when she got here, at the store. Now, I never wear scrubs around. I always wear like my normal civvies, but I was in my scrubs because I had started
It's
working for
funny
the
you call them
day.
civvies. That's what we call them in the
Yeah.
military. It's funny you call them
I
civvies.
I was a reference. Come on, I know my audience.
Yeah,
And
yeah, good job.
so thank you. So I literally was in my scrubs. I had taken my loops off, but my scrubs have my name on it, right? And the woman who's been around forever, who's owned the store in town forever. Now I've been in town 25 years, so I know all these people. I see all them, right? Maybe if they don't know if I don't know them personally. She's like, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "I'm a dentist." And she's like, "Where's your office?" I'm like, "Literally across the street." I'm just popping in so I can get my coworker a gift. She goes, "Oh, I could really use a cleaning. Are you accepting new patients?" And this is a woman who has owned this store in town. I know she's a legacy store in town for 60 years, like the kind of patient that I want in my practice, right? A legacy practice with a legacy storefront owner in town who can just tell all her friends now of her new experience, right? And I said, of course, we're always accepting new patients. And I wrote down on a card for her, my new patient coordinator, Valerie, asked for her specifically, and it would be our pleasure to take care of you. And literally, I built business while I was buying my coworker daughter a present, right? A half block from my office. And that happens all day, every day. And it's been a major contributor to the growth of my practice because I am in town and I like to bullshit with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think we're the same that way. Yeah. There's nothing. My wife gets so embarrassed in public. I talk to random strangers. So can you just not do that? My wife's not as much of an extrovert as I am. So, well, let's wrap this up here. There's a lot to unpack in being a city dentist. I think you unpacked a lot of it. I think one thing that docs don't think about, we really hit on, was you think you're in this giant sea, but really you end up in a tiny bowl of water where your reputations are going really far and people know, right? I think there are challenges of getting into the city, but I think when you're in the city kind of accepts you as part of the city.
Oh, there's no question, no question. With open arms, it just takes time, right? But you get out of it whatever you put in. Just like if you were in the suburbs, or just like you were in the middle of the country, or if you're in the city, you still have to be a part of your community. In my opinion, it's how you're held in high regard. Yes, you fight for space. Yes, you fight for rent. Yes, you fight on fees. Yes, you fight on experience. But I will tell you, people have big practices in town that are insurance driven, that have a whole floor. They just run more patients through. I mean, you can do it. The numbers can all work out. You can practice any way you want to. It truly becomes a lifestyle choice. That's really, I think, what it comes down to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Fleischman. Thank you guys for listening to us. This is Dental Unfiltered. Remember, we have no sponsors. There's no pay to play. Everything we bring you is good, clean content that there's no agenda, there's no sales pitches. Also, in the link below is our virtual study club. It's got 350 different dental professionals in it. We do webinars once a month for free. We bring in people like Kelly Schwartz for tips and tricks on hygiene recall. We have Tom Orient, I think, coming up next for fee for service tips, how to drop PPOs. So please tune in, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you guys and have a great day.